Hello, Internet. I am Ryan Ingram, and this is the Friday morning real estate chat. This camera, I've been having fits with this camera since I've been trying to set this up. Just keeps drifting off. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. If you are just joining, then please join the Reddit community. It's called Talk Real Estate. That's the name of the subreddit, and that's going to keep us in contact throughout the entire week. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen over on the Reddit, and that way we can go ahead and start discussing some of these things because it's been a great place to ask questions. So let's go over some of the things on this Reddit. Again, we're up to 27 members. Maybe we can pass that 30 mark today. So I'm having tons of fun. Just hearing from everybody. And as we discussed last week, I mean, YouTube just is not the greatest of platforms to get in like long form conversation. So I'm really optimistic about just forming deeper connections and relationships with the audience of the YouTube channel that's actually hungry, aggressive, and really looking forward to taking a lot of action to just change your life and create generational wealth through real estate investing. So this is a phenomenal question that was asked by Dr. Brett Wickstrom. I think I'm saying that right. And he's actually been pretty active on these live streams. So hopefully he shows up today. And this is a really good question. And as you can see, I have had this draft. I've had this open for quite some time because I have spent a lot of time thinking about this question. So let's go over that. Can someone explain to me why anyone who is failing to pay their mortgage and is in pre-foreclosure wouldn't just sell their home? I don't see where the deal is. If they can't pay their mortgage in the current market, at least in my area, the value of the homes is up at least 15 to 30% from last year. This should give them more than enough equity to sell and cancel their debt while avoiding foreclosure. Conversely, if they owe so much or their home value is close to the value of their mortgage, why would anyone be able to buy this cheap enough to make money renting or flipping? I'm really having a hard time finding anything I would consider a deal. Even distressed homes are asking very close to retail. So close that after repair, the total investment would be more than similar comps in that area. Many are asking full retail value for highly distressed homes in horrible neighborhoods. I'm really struggling to understand how or where to find a deal. So I agree. My brother and I have actually had conversations ad nauseum when we were first starting about like why. So our first line of thought was, why isn't everyone investing in real estate? And then once we bought our first couple of homes, let's just run through the numbers on our first couple of properties. We bought our first duplex for $35,000. Each side was rented for very close to $500. So we make we gross $1,000 per month off of a $35,000 investment. Now, any of you that have ever held a mortgage before, you can already do the math in your head, and you know that buying a $35,000 home, the mortgage on it would be lesser than $500 per month. So why in the world would you pay $500 to rent in this place? The second property that we purchased was a $28,000 home, recently renovated. It looks spectacular. Our mortgage is $112 per month on that property, and it is rented out for, I think right now it's rented out for about $800. So there is a massive delta between the mortgage that you would be paying if you just purchased the property and the rent that you are paying to live there. Now, there are a ton, just a myriad of factors as to why someone would choose to rent over purchasing a home. Now, some of those are voluntary and some of those are involuntary. Maybe one could make that argument. And again, I am only thinking through this through like my experience, how I view the world. I don't know what I don't know. And there are just so many people out there that, there are an equal number of opinions and views on the world, right? So I would say from my perspective, it's really difficult to justify renting a property for $800 when you could buy it and have like a mortgage for like $112. it's a big question mark to me. But at the same time, not everyone thinks that way, and not everyone has the same background of knowledge of homeownership. I know some people in my peers that are doing better than I am on like a salary basis, on an annual basis, and they vowed to never own a home. They have no interest in it. They're going to rent forever. That's just their preference, and they don't really care about the money that they could be saving if they purchased. So I think the more you get familiar with real estate investing, I think the more that you are exposed to this industry, there are going to be some massive question marks that really, arise on your plate. This one in particular, I think, is along the same train of thought. Now, I guess before I move on, I just want to finish with the fact that eventually my brother and I really just stopped asking ourselves that question because there is obviously a need for it. And even though we don't really understand it or we can't necessarily relate to it, it's there. And it's one of those things that we have to, serve our residents to the best of our ability, regardless of why they are or are not doing what it is that they're doing. And, just briefly, the myriad of reasons. I mean, personal preference is one, like I just discussed. People just don't want to own homes. And they're willing to pay a premium to never have any issue fall on their plate. Credit scores, job histories, income, all of those are also, being bankable is not the easiest thing for a lot of people. And a lot of real estate investors have a difficult time being bankable while entering the real estate investing industry. So similarly, there are even more people out there that have a difficult time being bankable just to own a home. Now, on that same vein, I also think that there are a lot of people that found themselves in home ownership that shouldn't necessarily own homes. Like home ownership is put on this pedestal, and it has for quite some time. I mean, the whole old school like American dream type thing is definitely, home ownership is a big piece of that. So a lot of people have purchased homes not knowing what goes into owning a home, being underprepared for that. And, a lot of these banks don't necessarily care about your cash reserves, whether or not you know how to take care of a home. They don't really explain what you're signing up for whenever they give you like a 30-year mortgage. And if you don't have much of a knowledge on the real estate side of things, then most certainly you could easily find yourself overpaying for a home if you are buying it based on, just its cosmetic appearance, its location, anything. If it's an emotional purchase and not necessarily caring about the comps, if you plan to live there forever. There are a lot of people out there and a lot of different lives to live, right? So there are tons of different reasons as to why you might have to abandon a home if you purchased it and you owe more on it than it's worth. And then, there's also the ugly truth of a lot of people will purchase homes. Like yesterday, I walked through a property. It was last purchased for like $90,000. It's currently on the market for $65,000. And there is an extensive amount of deferred maintenance on the property. So the homeowner, he purchased it and he never took care of it, never did any updates, never fixed any of the, non-essential items. The plumbing was good. The electric, it all worked. The furnace and AC unit worked just fine. But as far as, all of the cosmetic and even the like exterior functional things, like trees were growing on top of the roof. I said that strangely. There were limbs of trees growing into the roof, gutters full, little things like that can cause an extensive amount of damage if left unchecked for quite some time. So to your point there, though, Dr. Brett Wickstrom, is if that is the condition of the house, then once you put in all of the necessary repairs, then you are very close to retail value. So let's just, hypothesize that property is worth $90,000. If you purchase it for $65,000, but you have to put, $20,000 into it to bring it up to speed. Now you're sitting at $85,000 on a house that's worth like $90,000. That's not too much meat on the bone for you to to excite you. From a flip perspective, those margins are very thin. So if anything unexpected came up during that process, then you would be left holding the bag or holding that bill, which isn't ideal. So I know that just to slowly come back around to a point, other than kind of commiserating with you about the state of these things, is I would say to this first thing. So why anyone who is failing to pay their mortgage and is in pre-foreclosure wouldn't just sell their home. And I think I attempted to hit on that to begin with. So let's just use this $90,000 now worth $65,000 home that I walked yesterday. He could not sell it because he never did any maintenance, he just left so much deferred maintenance on the property that he would not be able to sell it for what he purchased it for. Now, in a hot market where prices have risen 15 to 30%, maybe, but he's still not going to be able to not be upside down. Now, he purchased this property so long ago that his mortgage is paid down under that 65,000 point. But to your end, I would say that the vast majority of this just comes down to education. And I think if you were to talk to wholesalers or realtors that are prepping, their sellers to sell their home, the wholesalers or just the real estate investors that do a lot of their own direct mail marketing, is a big portion of what they're doing is educating the individual that has the home on their options, what's available to them, where they went wrong. It's because it's obviously, I can't, I can't see it being a very comfortable conversation with the realtor whenever he told the person that just bought, he bought the house at some point for $90,000 and the market conditions are up significantly from when he purchased the home. But now he can only sell it for less. So, it's not a complete loss. And I was actually talking to the realtor about it yesterday when we were leaving this house. And he said that when the realtor that I use when we're purchasing properties on the MLS, he said that a lot of these times when he is having a conversation with the person that wants to sell their home, the way that he tries to salvage the conversation is, hey, you paid for the entire time that you lived here, you paid less than you would have if you were renting it. Unfortunately, you didn't put any money into it to keep it up to the standard at which you bought it in. So you're not going to be able to get the full value out. So rather than all the money that you would have lost in paying the rent over the years because you had such a low mortgage, you just didn't use that money to reinvest in the property. Now you're just kind of paying for that difference now as we're listing it for a lesser amount than you bought it for because you didn't take care of it as necessary. And, there's also a property that is right next door to one that we own, and it is almost completely, I think it should be condemned, quite frankly. There is a tarp. It has a tarp for a roof. There are clearly holes in the roof. You can see the tarp kind of concaving in, and it is owner occupied. And now in that particular circumstance, just in my little bouts of insomnia, going through and looking at it, they had a family member pass away, which is why ultimately they inherited the home. But again, home ownership is not for everyone. I would argue that it takes a pretty strong financial position to actually reap the benefits of home ownership. And I think you have to build up to that financial position prior to owning a home, or very aggressively after you purchase your home, so that you could appropriately tackle any of the things that could go wrong with your house. So these people clearly don't have the appropriate funding to fix all of the things that are wrong with their house. And because of that, it is falling in around them. I don't know how long those tarps will protect them not only from the weather, but also, the rafters. Like, how long is it before those trusses rot and cave in? So situations like that kind of make me wonder. And I think it just comes down to, there's truly a lot of value that you are bringing to the table as you are, doing the research, educating yourself in the real estate industry, that there are a lot of people that never check up to teach themselves that. Same thing as far as like, I would kind of compare it to like personal trainers, because sure, everybody interacts with shelter. So you would think that people would educate themselves on the shelter, but like, how many personal trainers work at gyms where everybody eats? You have to, but there's so many people that don't understand like what they're putting into their body or why they're putting it into their body, that personal trainers are a profession. Like, everybody should work out, but not everybody knows how to work out, or, that's what the personal trainer is there for. I would say that investors, wholesalers, realtors, they serve a very similar role as far as like education and walking people through their options and the things that are best fit for them. So in the event of like where the deal comes from that standpoint, I mean, there are some occasions where there might not be a deal. So if the property is, so distressed that the property plus the rehabs is very close to the after repair value, the banks, they're not in the business of owning real estate. Sure, they're going to try and list it for what they have in it, but if it sits on the market for quite some time, they're going to be forced to lower their price until they lower it to a point where a homeowner wants to take on the burden of fixing that, or if they lower it to a point where it falls inside of one of these flippers deal parameters. And then, I mean, I guess the other option, I think I already said it though, negotiation. I've been rambling about this for quite some time. I also can't see like the comments when I'm sharing the screen like this. So thank you all for being on here. I'm going to keep rambling and try to answer this question though. And again, this is why I really didn't type it out, although I probably still will later today. But yeah, I don't think, from my experience with foreclosures, I don't think that most of the time this is a realistic option. I see a lot of foreclosures. If you lack the education of like what the process is like to sell your home, if there's a lot of deferred maintenance, a lot of people fall behind on their mortgages in the events of like, a event happens on their house that they do not have the funds to pay for. And they slowly just abandon the home, and they don't necessarily go out and figure out their options that are available to them, which is, again, why there's so much opportunity in like direct mail marketing and contacting owner-occupied pre-foreclosures just to help educate. And then, a lot of times it just comes up with the fact of they are pretty grossly underwater. And at some point, the bank is going to have to either lower their price. And a lot of these home loans anymore are backed by the federal government. So if they're Fannie or Freddie loans, then, even though the house is distressed and upside down, if it's backed by the government, once it goes through for the foreclosure process, the bank will purchase it at the auction, and then the bank will sell it to exactly what they're owed for, like down to the penny, back to the federal government, of which case it becomes a HUD home. And then the government is the one that takes the brunt hit of the fact that the people had so much deferred maintenance on their property, let it go, and left it in pretty harmful conditions. So I think that is when the property, they're just trying to settle for whatever pennies to the dollar that they can get out of the property. But they are fair listed to be the first, 21 days or something, owner occupant only, 14, something like that. I'm a little rusty on those rules. And then after that, if no owner occupant or potential owner occupant bids on the property, then it's available to anyone. So that's another way that those are. So it kind of is it's just one of those things. And I would say that because of all of those things that I just said, in more competitive markets like yourself, where there is meat on the bone, where there's actually going to be some profit to be had if a flipper or wholesaler kind of walks alongside these owner occupants, then the market does become, a lot more competitive, and people spend more time doing, I guess, the education, the hand holding, and trying to get these deals off market because the deals on the MLS have such thin margins that they're putting in all of their work on like the marketing side. And if you're not like a full-time real estate professional, then you're right. I think it becomes next to impossible to get good deals in competitive markets if you're just watching the MLS, because all of these full-time real estate people are doing the direct mail marketing. They're answering all of people's phone calls. Any of these, from my understanding, the direct mail and the bandit signs in competitive markets have a decent deal flow come their way, and they're able to negotiate a good bit. I think if you were to, I think the fellow's name is Max Maxwell. I think he's down in North Carolina in a really competitive market, and he does a bunch of wholesaling and teaching on that. So those are my thoughts. And as far as struggling to understand how or where to find a deal, I would say everybody does. And similar to the the old adage in personal finance of you should have 7 streams of income, I think it would be prudent, if you're interested in investing in real estate, is establishing 7 streams of deal flow. So I don't think you should rely on any deals coming from one place. And, like right now in the market that you're in, it sounds like the MLS is a pretty dry lead generation pool. So if you were to try to figure out what other stream you could tap into in order to find deals that are working. So I would say that one of the things that I always work to remind myself of is in every market, both like location wise, and every market as far as like the valuation of the home values, there are real estate investors out there that are making money. So it's just a matter of pivoting your strategy to what is working in your market. So networking with other real estate investors, watching trends, staying in tune, and really getting a good thumb. That's not what you use to check your pulse. Just keeping a good eye on the pulse of your market, what other investors are doing, and what's working is really important. And what is it that I really dislike that everybody says? Just another tool for your tool belt, I guess. That's how you should treat all of the streams of deal flow. So whenever one starts drying up, you should look at a couple others. Here we go. There are a lot of comments. Let me stop this screen share. Here we go. Back to me, big old Ryan. We'll go over some other things really quickly. Good morning, Ryan. Hope you had a good week. I sure did. It was my son's first week of preschool, so that was fun. And on the first night of preschool, my son was on the playground, and he made a hole in his face somehow, right under his nose. He fell on something, so we got him to the ER, and he got some stitches, but he was a trooper. How do you go about valuing a deal? Were you able to pull the deal I sent you? Pull up the deal I sent you. No, but I will. Nice. I just got a text message when I was looking for the deal that you sent me, and somebody else quit the police department. That's really exciting. He says, I need to lean on you a little bit. Health insurance. Yeah, I'm gonna help that out. Congratulations. So good job to all like the law enforcement people out there, but at the same time, just make sure you're doing what's best for your family. How do you go about valuing a deal? I would say checking out the ARV, looking at all of the comps. Man, I don't have the ability to do that in Guam, I don't think. I'll look at that today, right after the call, and I'll get back with you. I have not looked at it yet. Let's see. I usually believe you can't overpay for a home as the appraisal would be done and bank won't overpay. Can you explain how you can overpay? Oh, for sure. Because Tolu, unfortunately, that is just such a false parameter that you just put on So the appraisers, like their one and only job is to say yes, right? No disrespect to anybody in the appraisal industry, but the banks are paid. The appraisers are paid, by the bank. Now, most times they are like contracted through like an appraisal, like conglomerate type deal, like Appraisal Nation, I think, or AMC. I don't know all the names of all of the ones that are out there. And, a lot of times those are now being paid outside of the HUD. But at the same time, appraisers, they get their work from the banks, and the banks make money when money is lent out. And eventually, if, markets are increasing and all the appraisals are coming back low, then the deal flow is going to dry up for the banks, and the appraisers are going to start getting fewer and fewer calls. So unfortunately, if you follow the money, I think the current appraisal system is very well incentivized to say yes and to have things meet as close to the purchase price as possible. Now, I'm sure that there is a lot of especially the appraisal industry experts that have been doing this for 30, 40 years. I'm sure those words that I just said would be combated pretty hard. But at the same time, if you are, or if anybody that's purchasing a home is leaning on the opinion of the bank or the appraiser, then I think that's a really bad spot to put yourself in. And I think, doing your own research, pulling true comps, and just making sure that you're not buying the most expensive house in any given neighborhood. And in markets that properties are selling for X number of dollars over asking, that rapidly drives up the comps that are available, which in turn drives up all of the values of the properties around them, because real estate is based on comparable sales of comparable, or the sales of comparable properties in any given area. So as far as home ownership goes, I would not trust the banks or the appraisers or the realtors to get like an actual market value of the property, to make sure that you're not overpaying for something. And as much as the appraisers try to factor in everything in the property. So here's a more technical answer that is not as biased as all of the things that I just said, which, at its base could be argued against for a pretty long time. But, appraisers are not inspectors. So let's say that, the roof has like a year left on it, and unbeknownst to the appraiser, the roof has a couple layers of shingles on it. You pay full retail for the property, and then a year later, the roof goes out. Well, now you're looking at what, $15,000, $20,000 for a new roof, and consequently, you now have $20,000 into the property over what it's worth. So now you're kind of upside down. And that's just one example. And sure, in theory, an inspector should catch that. And again, in theory, on paper, like the checks and balances of like the bank not having collateral that isn't sufficient to cover the loan amount. There's enough checks and balances to make sure that doesn't happen. But at the end of the day, in order to continue making money, all of these things have to continue. And if these things don't align and it stops the lending of money, you're in a tough spot. Many first-time homeowners don't realize that they have to pay water, sewage, trash bill every quarter, utilities, maintenance, property taxes, pest control, landscaping, shoveling snow. Doesn't include mortgage. Yes, you're very correct. Again, homeownership is not for everybody. I would say, homeownership is probably for the financially sound, the people that have good personal finance principles and stuff in place. That's a good point. This is my first deal. Hasn't happened, but what does happen when the home doesn't appraise for selling price? Generally, there's just two things that could happen. Either the purchase price falls down to the appraisal amount, or if the seller is not on board with that appraisal and they refuse to budge, then in that case you would have to you would just have to make up the delta out of your pocket. So if it appraises, if the purchase price is 150 and the appraisal comes back in at 120,000, then whatever down payment you were already making with the bank on that $120,000, now you just add an extra $30,000 onto it if you want to make that deal work. And I think this is something that a lot of people really never think about. But I mean, so clearly if the realtor is doing his job appropriately, then the realtor is looking at comps based on the condition and the value of the home that they're about to list for an individual. I'm sure that homeowner often already has like comps that he wants to base his property off of. Or if he just has like an emotionally subjective price and he thinks his property is better than all the other properties that just sold for X amount, so he wants to add like an extra $10,000 to $15,000 on it and refuses to budge on the realtor's perspective. I mean, the realtors generally oblige and they generally say, okay, let's list it for what you think it's worth for a couple of weeks and see what happens. So you've already kind of gone through like two opinions of value, and then once you get to that, and then you have like a third opinion of value whenever you find like a willing buyer to purchase it at the price that those first two put on the property. So you've already got three opinions of value before the appraiser comes in, because a deal has already really been struck, and now the appraiser just has to verify that these first three opinions of value are reasonable. So that the bank isn't overextended, or whoever is ordering the appraisal. So I don't know. It's a crazy world. I'd like to say that it's a gray area. All right, the bank won't pay more. You can decide to add the balance through, but I don't advise that, except you are very sure the appraisal is not correct and the house actually. Yeah, cool. What is your take? I'll take a look at it. Let me see what it is. Dude, your rent's there, man. $2,000 per door. That's awesome. Plus they each pay $400 for utilities. So cool. That's a good looking place too. I have no concept of how to share this on the screen. So let me just run through this really quick. Built in 1985. It's a 4-unit on 6,000 square feet in the wonderful, what is it? A territory? Guam? Okay, and you're leaving one of the units for yourself. Purchase price $930,000. After repair value 1.1. I got the cap rate at 4%. Oh, also, as I'm looking at this, I just want to say really quickly, because I know everybody is super excited about it, is the app. I talked to the developer yesterday, and he is putting, I think he submitted it last night to the Apple Store and whatnot. So it will be available soon. So if you get bored and you just want to keep checking for Ingram Rental, it's called the Ingram Rental Calculator, and it'll be available sooner than later. Amortizing over 30 years at 2.7%. Okay, so I just want to say this really quickly. I am not encouraging anyone to overpay on anything or enter into any bad deals. However, at current interest rates that are available to anybody willing to house hack, you are getting free money. It is in your best interest almost 100% of the time to get a 30-year mortgage at 2.7%. If you ever have the opportunity to borrow money, any money, over such a long-term period at 2.7%, you should do it. The historical average rate of inflation is 3.22% per year. So every year, historically, appreciation has been more than, or like right at 3.22%. So before all this money printing occurred, I would say, anybody lending money at lesser than 3.22%, even like 5%, I just don't understand like why it's worth their time, right? Because on fixed mortgages, it's not like the original loan amount or the interest rate can ever change. So, I mean, now that you're seeing interest rates below 3.22%, then the bank is losing money lending to you, because that average rate of inflation does not include whatever repercussions there may or may not be from the trillions of dollars that have been printed over the past couple years. All right. Rehab costs overrun 10%, objections and projections. I mean, I would say all like this report that you just sent me, it is far in excess of any kind of valuation that I would see. And I mean, the negative cash flow of $652 per month that you have projected, man, I would say it's still a worthwhile deal because the property is going to continue to appreciate. You're going to continue paying down the principal. And since you're living there, I mean, $652 that you have to come out of pocket to service the loan and keep everything afloat. But this includes 10% vacancy, which you likely won't see because of the high demand of rentals in your area. And it also includes, just like a blanket operating expenses of 55.6. So yeah, man, I would say that this is a good deal. I would say you've analyzed it very well. And I would say this is most certainly something that you should do. Should you increase rent yearly and at what rate? Yes, absolutely. Yes, you should. And I think, I know that there are a lot of people out there that, they analyze their deal. They see what they should rent properties out for. They purchase the property, they're on a fixed rate mortgage and they get somebody in there. They continue making money and they say, you know what, this is a great person. I don't want them to leave. So I'm not going to raise the rents. And I think by and large, that is bad business because your numbers are going to change on an annual basis. Now, some years they're going to be subtle. Some years they're going to be drastic. I know most here in Montgomery County, they reassess taxes, I think, every 3 years. So for 3 years, we're not going to have a tax increase. However, on that third year, we might have a tremendous tax increase. So whether you raise, so let's just say like from taxes alone, if it's going to be like a $75 per month increase on us, then now, taxes, they don't care how good of a tax paying citizen you are, right? It doesn't prevent them from raising your taxes. Similarly, insurance companies, they don't care how good you are at paying your premiums. They're still going to raise your premiums whenever they need to, in order to make sure that they remain a profitable company. And in order to make sure that they are not losing a certain amount of premium every month or money, So everybody else is raising rents or raising their prices relentlessly to protect their profitability. And most certainly, as a small-time landlord, you need to also protect your profitability at all costs, truly, because if you ever become, unprofitable, then what is this really all for, right? So I would say even if you do not experience any insurance or tax rate increases, any like service rate increases, if everything stays the same, I would say that it's still good form and good practice to raise your rents at least a minimal amount on an annual basis, $15, $25, something that's that's safe, that's not going to make anybody move over, just to get in the rhythm of, okay, every year these rents increase. Because, if you actually do the math, if you scale your portfolio to any size, I mean, even not, it's just good practice to regularly make sure that you stay as close to market rent as possible. Because the last thing that you want to do, in a lot of the packages that we're buying lately, we've got properties that are rented out for $300, $500 per month that the market rent is $750, $900 on those same units. So it's one of those things where you don't want to be leaving that much money on the table every month. And if you don't raise your rents regularly, that's going to sneak up on you. So because we bought these properties at such an extraordinary discount because they were under rented, and consequently there's a lot of deferred maintenance on them, we have plans of like raising rents appropriately, just like across the board, because we have to in order for that deal to continue to work. I know we have one property that is rented out for $600 per month, but the taxes are about $3,000 per year. So, I'm sure you've heard the rule of thumb of like 50% for expenses and whatnot. So, hey, at that point, taxes take like 50% of the income, which is bananas. So that one needs to be drastically raised. Now, for the people that want to stay, for the people that take good care of the properties, we do have a cap of like $100 per month. I don't think in many or any cases we have gone above that. I'm not 100% sure. But yes, always raise rents, even though it's uncomfortable, won't be fun. It'll always be just a little bit confrontational. Nobody will be too happy, but if you're good at explaining it, and I mean, if you're good at just pointing to the fact that your insurance premiums went up and your taxes went up, then it kind of is what it is. WB Blue, good morning. Do you have any experience or opinion renting out family fully furnished units? No. Nope. We've had several conversations about like venturing into Airbnb, but fully furnishing the places is one of the things that keeps us on the sidelines of that. We don't have any interest in doing that. Going back to overpaying for a property question, I have a friend who overpaid about $100K because it didn't appraise. He used his retirement money. This was in DC. Yeah, I think that's probably like a pretty bad idea. Yeah. Using $100K retirement funds to overpay for a property in DC because it didn't appraise. I don't know. Anytime you do that, it's either an emotional decision or you are betting on the continuation of the appreciation in the area. So if he thinks that he's getting a spectacular deal and he is also, willing to bet his farm on the fact that the DC area is going to continue to appreciate in value, then it might pan out. I know most real estate issues, this is one of the reasons that I really love real estate, is if you kind of extrapolate your mistake over like a 30-year period, then the mistake becomes pretty minimal. You can withstand most mistakes in real estate with a long enough time frame attached to it. So I'm sure there are people, I'm sure there are countless stories about people in like the, Silicon Valley area that 15 years ago, they were convinced that they overpaid by like 50 grand to get into those properties. And now, the appreciation has has such like far outweighed the amount that they overpaid that it's kind of a moot point. But just in speaking in broad terms, I do not believe that it is a good idea to overpay for anything. And one of the like real estate, I want to say monikers, but I kind of feel like that's the wrong word. You make money on the purchase. What is a moniker? I don't even know how to spell moniker. I don't know where that came. I don't even know where that word came from. A name. His real moniker is Dave Kennedy. That's what Google says about moniker. So that's the wrong word. One of the sayings in real estate, that's what I could have said. I don't know where moniker sneaked in. Oh boy, sneaked or snuck. Okay, I'm going to get off this. Yeah, you definitely want to make sure that you get a deal on the purchase. And I mean, in really hot markets, I get that that's really difficult. If it's an emotional decision, if it's one of those things where he's buying this property because it's so close to his job of which he is expecting to get a raise that is more than $100,000 over the next 5 or 6 years because he's going to live in that property, he's going to make his life substantially easier, then that might not be a bad idea. Who knows? There's a lot of different spins you could have on it, but just by and large, I would be weary of that. 13 people on, about an hour. Wow, we are already 47 minutes in. That's bananas. Okay. Good morning. Good morning. For any of you that are just joining, please be sure to go over here to Reddit and join our community. So there's 27 members currently. It's called Talk Real Estate. So if you go into Reddit or click the link in the description, it will bring you here. You're going to see a big brain icon because big brain people, they invest in real estate. And even bigger brain people join Talk Real Estate Reddit to talk about all things real estate on a regular basis. I try to comment so hard. So this is the real estate. Please go and join it. There's some introductions in here. We've already had 9 comments. And if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody, just say what market you're in, what type of real estate you're interested in, your long-term goals, short-term goals, any sort of current obstacles you're working through or need help with, and what do you want to get out of being part of the subreddit or the group, and what could this subreddit do for you to help you that would be a huge win for you. So we've had a couple people introduce yourself. You don't have to say your name if you don't want to. That's part of the beauty of Reddit is, hey, you can be transparent with like your name, who you are, where you are, or you could be a big mystery and never share anything about yourself. So, Jonathan, he wants to have, he's interested in single families and duplexes. He's not in a market. He's a nomad. He wants to retire early, get his first unit and kind of house hack it, then get the second unit, financing and confidence to try to move forward with the first deal. So it's going to be tons of fun. And for the most part, I fell off the ball a little bit, but truly gonna respond to pretty well all of the things that I see, except that novel that I opened up this live stream with. Goodness gracious, I didn't know how to answer that question, so hey, I figured it would be easier to address here on the live stream because it was just so long. I just raised rents on 15 units and added $980 to my monthly bottom line, which essentially is one additional unit without buying any more units. Yes, that's a fantastic point. And that's awesome. 980 divided by 15. Paul Amagatcher, man, you are. And to those that don't know Paul Amagatcher, he is the king of getting top dollar market rent. So that's on average about $65 per door is the rent increase that he took. And in essence, without doing any additional work or anything differently than he normally did, he was able to make an extra $980 per month, which is, man, really close to 12 grand per year. So that's pretty incredible. Good work, man. Makes me real excited. No, No, I would not do that because roofs are sneaky, and some of them last a lot longer than they say they'll last. So we do not go out willy-nilly replacing roofs that are older just because they don't leak. We have replaced a few roofs that did not leak this year, largely because the insurance company told me to. So there's one type of shingle that the insurance company that I work with is very apprehensive to seeing on any of the properties. It's like the diamond one. They're convinced that it's asbestos, even though there's like multiple. Like they still make this shaped shingle in asphalt, but they just assume it's all asbestos. They generally do a really good job while they're on there. But yeah, we replaced a couple of those just because the insurance company asked. But as just like a rule of thumb, I would not go around replacing roofs that don't leak just because it seems like the prudent thing to do. Especially now, I mean, a lot of these like dimensional shingles roofs, like the past few that we've replaced, they came with like 50-year warranties, which I think is pretty crazy. And in addition, they came with like I think it's like the first, I don't know. There's like an unlimited like wind mile per hour for the first couple years. I think like first 5 or 10 years, something like that. All right, we reached the bottom of the comment list. If you've got any questions, feel free to go ahead and put those in. I have done all of that without that pretty little disclaimer up. And let's see here. Post your questions in the chat, any that you may have, and I appreciate it. So let's see if I have anything to kind of catch you all up on. Today, we are doing the last round of appraisals for all of the properties that we're refinancing. We're doing a big refinance of 44 properties. Really optimistic about that. That's going to be good. And this is a commercial lender that we have worked with for a little bit on short-term loans. We haven't done any long-term debt with them yet, but it's 30 years. It's fixed. There's no balloon, and there's no prepayment penalties. So generally, the commercial loans that we have are around like a 20-year amortization period. So the fact that they're offering 30 years, and again, this is in like the 4 to 5% interest rate. So I'm really pumped about that. That's going to be a big win for our portfolio, as it's going to immediately reduce the amount that we're paying on a monthly basis. Because as you're familiar with a lot of these videos that I've done, we acquire properties by interest-only loans, generally from private investors. They're secured by the first position mortgage. They're interest only, 10, 12%, which is higher, but we're comfortable doing that because we're getting great deals, and we are also able to get into the deal with none of our own money into it. So when we're not using our own money, scaling becomes more of a bandwidth issue than a capital issue, which is a good place to be, which is why we're taking this. The risks, of course, there's a lot of exposure when doing that. If the market turns drastically, now our whole portfolio is about 60% leveraged, even though we get, even if you go based on like the purchase price and the rehab cost, we're like 100% leveraged, but on the actual appraised value of the properties, we're about 60% leveraged at the moment. So long as the market doesn't tank like around 40%, then this, well, really about 20, because you still need that 20% buffer for refinancing properties. So we can withstand like a 20% shift, a downward shift, before this business model needs to be reevaluated. And then I guess the other exposure is, for whatever reason, if banks just like across the board decide that they no longer have any interest in lending against like real estate, which that's pretty slim. Let's see here. What is your take about multiple accounts LLCs for your properties? That's a really good question. I think you should. I think in order to, I've got my disclaimer rolling. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a CPA. You should definitely talk to those, figure out the pros and cons. I mean, in essence, each LLC that you form needs to have its own bank accounts and books in order to truly be viewed as separate, so that veil of liability is not pierced. In order to have your own separate bank accounts, if you're using like a CPA, that likely is going to mean a different tax return or a different K1 to you from that new LLC or entity. So there's going to be a corresponding fee for that. So I think that if you are, my thing is, if you were to get a CPA, a attorney, and an insurance agent in a room to talk about like the best structure for you holding your rental properties, I think across the board, the insurance agent is going to make sure that all of your entities have the appropriate amount of insurance, and that the owners of all of these entities have the appropriate amount of personal insurance, so that they are protected virtually in any class, any potential like lawsuit. I think the attorney is going to attempt to divide up your assets into as many separate entities as possible to kind of flatten the overall risk on anything. So in theory, like one LLC per property is like the safest thing that you can do from a legal structure perspective, because in the event that one property faces a lawsuit, then the most that person can get, if all of the books and if the veil can't be pierced, the most that one person could get is that one property. And the rest of your portfolio, because it's fundamentally separate, because it's different entities and the veil was never able to be pierced because there was no commingling of funds, everything was to the T, then that's how that should work out. The CPA would likely attempt to do the thing that's most cost efficient to you. So when our CPA and attorney got into a room, they arbitrarily decided that 10 properties per LLC is a good like measure, a good number to keep to limit liability and also just protect the portfolio, like the global portfolio. Now, the cons again are the costs associated with each entity. So, and then not to mention the amount of time it's going to take on your behalf to keep everything separate, to have all of the different debit cards and whatnot, credit cards, whatever it is, keep all those separate books, make sure that each of those properties is, all the expenses are paid for separately. So there's a bunch of fees associated with that. And another thing that we never realized is, like, right now we're doing the portfolio refinance of 44 properties. Well, since we have 10 properties in each LLC, roughly that's about 5 different LLCs. So on this refinance, we are getting a separate fee for each entity, because even though it's a blanket loan, it's kind of like 5 different loans, because each LLC is going to have its own individual loan. So we're paying like an additional, I can't remember the exact number that Will told me, but we're paying a fee for each entity. So that's something that we are rethinking our current structure. We might go to the more of like the one LLC for everything model, just so that we can cut out all the groundwork. And then, I mean, so long as you make sure that you are appropriately insured, the liability burden has to be pretty massive to go over that insurance burden. Should you just put them all in one? It's totally a personal preference. I think I just answered all of that. It really, it really comes down to personal preference, how much work you're willing to do, and your overall risk tolerance. Insurance. Yeah, I wrote a book called Rental Property Insurance. It's self-published, so the profits go right to this fella. It's good for about $4 to $10 per month. It's got tons of good information in it. My overall strategy has changed a little bit, so you can still, like at the end of each chapter, it says if you want more information, reach out to me here. And it's got my email address. You can still do that, but it by no means is a sales pitch. So yeah, it's got a lot of good information, a lot of, it's pretty much just like all of the introductory conversations when I had a new client come to the agency, just all of the things that I thought all investors need to know about their insurance and how to make an educated choice about the coverages they get. Because insurance is, just like how many LLCs you should have. At some point, it's really up to personal preference and how much risk you're willing to shoulder yourself. So as far as this question goes, things that you definitely want to make sure it's covered. I would say from the liability perspective, do not skimp on the liability anymore. I would say the cost difference between having like $1 million liability on the insurance policy. So it would be $1 million per occurrence, $2 million just general aggregate. So during the life of that insurance policy would never pay out more than $2 million in liability coverage. And then the difference between like the lowest amount, which is generally about 100,000 per occurrence, or 300,000 like general aggregate, I would say the price difference might be maybe $50 to $100 per year. So it has minimal impact on you now, but in the event that you need it, there's a substantial difference between 100,000 in coverage and $1 million in coverage. So be mindful there. Don't skimp on liability. And the other thing that I would say is, the bare bones insurance policy for real estate investors that I recommend is just making sure that the actual residence is covered. Me personally, I do not insure the majority of the garages on the properties, just because, rebuilding a garage, our deductible is pretty high. And, the amount of damage that could be done on the garage has to be pretty substantial. In the worst case scenario, our deductible is higher than the amount that it would cost to just completely tear down and remove a garage. And the amount of impact on rent that the garage has is also pretty minimal towards the market value. So we don't cover any like other structures. So coverage B on your insurance policy, we run that pretty light. So I would say coverage A is most important, which is how much is on the actual dwelling or residence itself. And you're just going to want to make sure that that's a comfortable number, that if you want to rebuild that property, then it's sufficient to do so. If you want to walk away from that property, then you want it to be sufficient to reimburse you all of your original money and also leave you enough to clean up the debris, make the lot nice and pretty, and then walk away from it. So between the actual the coverage on the residence, there's no coverage B because there's, I don't personally insure any of my other structures. If you've got some like massive pole barn on a rental property for some reason, then it might make sense to have some coverage B or other structures on there. Coverage C, personal property, you shouldn't have it on there. Some people that just have just a few properties that provide the appliances and carry low deductibles, they want to carry just enough for all of the things that they furnished, like the appliances and whatnot. And then coverage D, the loss of use or loss of rents, that's important. So in the event that, like, especially since you're buying a 4-unit, in the event that like one person starts a kitchen fire and the other units become inhabitable or uninhabitable, whichever one it is, not only will your insurance company under coverage A cover the damages less your deductible of the kitchen fire, but coverage D would kick in, and you would also get loss of use or loss of rents for the other 3 units while you are fixing and doing all the construction on one. So that's another important one, especially in the event of like partial loss fires. So yeah, I would say in a nutshell, that's all the insurance that you should be sure you have. And then the deductible, just one of the things that I've just noticed across the board, it seems like $2,500 is like the most efficient deductible to have. That seems to be where you have the most amount of cost savings versus the most exposure, like monetary exposure in the event of a loss. Once you go up to 5,000, you might save like, I don't know, $50 per year. But I mean, the insurance companies, they really don't care about like that $2,500 because again, if they're doing like a partial loss fire, they're going to shell out tens of thousands of dollars. So from their standpoint, they don't really care whether you have a $5,000 or $2,500 deductible. So the savings really goes way down. But if you have a $500 deductible, then that kind of just tells the insurance companies that you're not really willing to take any personal responsibility for anything. So if anything ever goes wrong with that property, it's pretty much going to fall on the insurance company side. So there's a significant premium to that. So the difference between 2,500 and 5,000 really just comes down to how many years would you have to have that $5,000 deductible to save the $2,500 that inevitably you're going to spend whenever it comes time for a claim. Perfect question. As I was saying all of that, that is exactly what I was thinking that I should hit on next. So thank you. So yes, we require that all of our people have rental insurance, and we use software called Appfolio, which I recommend. I would say I recommend it, and they have integrated with a Lloyd's of London company. I think they're called Roost Renters Insurance. And what they're willing to do is they are willing to schedule kind of like a master policy, a master insurance policy. Because let me just back up and let me say, and I have a little segment about this in the book. And I would say the most difficult part about requiring all of your residents to have renter's insurance is keeping up with the paperwork. So you're going to most certainly want to be an additional insured on that paperwork. So in the event that there's a loss, you're named on it. Like you are printed out on the check. And if you are listed as an additional insured, then you have all of the same rights to that insurance policy as they do. So a lot of people, because of that, are funny about adding other people as additional insureds because, you know, there's two sides to the sword here. Being an additional insured as a landlord provides more coverage to you because in the event that a partial loss occurs, let's say that they suffer some, personal item loss and you suffer some property damage, it's going to be one claims check with both parties' names on it. So, that gets pretty involved. Additional interest, that's like notification only. So if the policy cancels, is non-renewed, you would be getting notified via mail that's happening. So at a very minimum, you want to be an additional interest. At the very most, an additional insured is like covering your interests the most. However, all of this comes along with keeping in touch, like keeping up to date with all that paperwork. They're supposed to notify most people 30 days in advance, but that's all the processing or lead time that you get. And if there's anything that I've noticed about most investors through my time of being an insurance agent that caters towards real estate investors is most are very unorganized and most have a really difficult time keeping up with all the paperwork. So most people are not able to stay on top of their renter's insurance policies. And you're also going to get notices of cancellations for non-payments. So same as they don't pay you, they might not pay these people, and these people, you're just gonna have to catch it. But what are you gonna do if their insurance policy cancels? Are you going to evict them subsequently? So those are just things to think about. And it just becomes it becomes like an administrative nightmare to stay on top of all of that. So this master policy that Appfolio has, it fully integrates with the software. Is the policy is in like the property management company's name, or the owner's name, and any of their rental properties are scheduled on those properties. So it's called like a landlord liability policy. So it does not cover their personal belongings. It only covers the damages that they may do to your property. And just because it seamlessly integrates with our management software, it costs like $9.50 per month. We make no money on that. That's like a pass through. The caveat to this one policy, this master policy, is once you schedule properties on there, then you have to pay that $9.50 per month, regardless of whether you collect their rent or not. So it's one of the things that you pay and then get reimbursed from the resident. So I prefer that because it's got a $0 deductible. It stays off my insurance policy. So in the event that a resident starts a kitchen fire and burns down our house, that does not get put on my insurance policy because I'm not the one that started the fire. The house didn't start the fire. The insurance company that I'm with, we had no contributing circumstances. The people that don't require their residents have renter's insurance, then there's nobody for this for your insurance company to kind of subrogate to. So kind of by default, they cover you. But if you get enough of those, then you're going to have a really expensive insurance premium across the board. Keep in mind, insurance companies, they always share each other's information. So any company that you're ever going to go to is going to know that you had all these fires, and they are going to adjust your premiums accordingly. So yes, have that. This master policy, it's got a $0 deductible, and it does not reflect on our insurance companies, whatnot. So that's fun. I think that's a good alternative. The only other things that I've heard of people doing, and this is the people that have a decent amount of like size portfolios, but I do know that there are some people, because like Roost, that policy that I just told you about, it's $9.50 per location per month. So I have heard of companies much larger than us. They have like a $10 surcharge for that person not providing their insurance. Now, this person in particular that I'm talking about, they've got like 14,000 units. So for them, $10 per month per property is a substantial amount of money. And because it's at such scale, just the law of numbers, the law of averages, you're not going to have as many apartment or partial fires as you have money coming in. So in that case, they are collecting so much money on that surcharge that in the event that a kitchen fire occurs, they actually do some pretty cool stuff. So they will put that resident in a different unit. They fix the unit from the money that they are collecting from the surcharges, and they will also buy that person new furniture to replace everything, just because they're bringing in so much money from that surcharge just across their portfolio that it makes sense. So they don't use it necessarily as like a revenue stream or a profit stream, so to speak. They truly kind of use it to help out their residents in the event that they accidentally set one of their units on fire. So I think that's pretty cool. Good morning. Finally woke up early enough to catch the live stream. What is the normal rent late fees after the initial grace period has passed? Is it a daily late charges? Hey, Raul, 1972. Thanks for joining us, man. That's across the board. Everybody does it a little bit differently. The city of Dayton actually recently said that like a flat $25 late fee is like all you can charge. So I think different municipalities say different things, whether it's enforceable or not, who really knows? I know my attorney often tells me that daily late charges, because we bought a portfolio where it's a $25 initial like flat fee for being late after the grace period. I think most grace periods that I've ever seen are like 4 or 5 days, and then it's like a $10 per day thereafter. So my attorney often tells me that the courts very much so frown upon daily late charges or anything that racks up, anywhere close to like 50, because $10 a day, what is that, like $300 on a property that's like $700 per month rent? So you're racking up like 40, close to 50% of the monthly rent in late fees. It's pretty bananas. So the court doesn't like that too much. I would say it's across the board. I've seen leases as high as like $85, and I've seen them as low as $25. I would definitely say that just from a general business perspective, once somebody owes you money, you want the consequence to be severe enough to kind of motivate them to pay you. I don't think $25 does the trick, but I also think $10 a day is brutal. So I think there's happiness somewhere in the middle. In theory, I'm a huge fan of the daily late fee because it is brutal to motivate them to pay you, but at the same time, it is 100%, in my opinion, unfair to the recipient. Besides cosmetics, what's some main highlights people miss when inspecting investment properties to purchase? That's a good one. So here are all of the things that I have learned to take special attention to when buying properties based on my previous mistakes. So one of the first things that I look for when I am walking around properties is the gutters and the downspouts. So groundwater, if not properly diverted, can do tens of thousands of dollars of damage. And depending on the condition of the downspouts and the gutters, it's likely that the groundwater hasn't been properly diverted for quite some time. I know I've shared a couple of times that we had a basement wall collapse on us, and that was like $16,000 worth of damage just caused by rainwater. And also, fun fact, since we're talking about insurance, is improperly diverted groundwater is never cause for a claim. So oftentimes the general rule of thumb for insurance companies is a cover, like in an event that is covered has to occur in order for the corresponding damage to be covered. General wear and tear or overall negligence, like long-term negligence, is not covered. So groundwater and it being properly diverted is a really big deal. So check the gutters, check the downspouts, check the extensions. In the perfect world, I would trench out all of the downspouts and put in not the corrugated pipe, but the actual like PVC, just a thick PVC drain, similar to like, the sewer stack in a house, all the way out to the street. Get it out there. Get all the water away from your house as far as possible. But digging trenches in length, the material's cheap, but the actual manpower in digging those trenches is pretty serious. So I always thought to myself, I always think that in the event that I retire and I'm very bored, I think I would like to buy one of those like walk behind Bobcats that has like a trenching accessory to it, and just go out and recreationally just trench all the downspouts on all of our properties. So that's really important. The other thing, like inside the house, that I think is commonly overlooked, you always want to check, and each area is unique because the majority of the housing stock in all areas were built at different time periods when different building materials were in vogue. So here we have a bunch of galvanized plumbing. If we ever buy a house that has galvanized plumbing, we immediately replace it. Including a lot of the houses that were built here in this area have a galvanized water main. So the water pressure is likely to be pretty horrible in these properties that have galvanized water mains, because even though the pipe, is, I don't know, however big in diameter, there might only be like a very small opening just because of all the corrosion inside of it. So I definitely check out the water main. in addition to all the other plumbing, which, it's just important to note the different types of plumbing. CPVC, the kind of yellowish stuff, not the blue and red stuff, but like the yellowish pipes. That stuff is notorious for leaking for some reason at some point. So it's not a matter of if, but when with the CVBC. The galvanized plumbing needs to go immediately. Galvanized water mains are pretty common here. So I always go over to where the water enters the property and check to see if it's copper or galvanized. And then if it is galvanized, then here it costs about $2,200 to $2,800, depending on the length between the house and the street, on replacing that. So that's something that you want to be mindful for. The electrical, knob and tube, you want to stay away from that. Again, I think that's specific to the era that most of our housing stock was built. So knob and tube, almost impossible to insure and really notorious for burning down homes, especially homes that have blown in insulation in the interim. Knob and tubes in the attics and the basements, you're going to want to check that out. And then one of the things that I would buy a roofer or two, some beers, walk them around properties, and just have them teach you kind of the tricks of the trade and what they look for to determine if a roof is bad or not. One of the only things that I really know is going to the edge of the properties and just trying your hardest to find one of the areas that aren't one of the main areas and figure out like how many layers of shingles are on there. Some of the super suave, very fancy roofers install like a drip edge really close over the underlying shingles, and they hide the previous layer of shingles. So the only real way to be sure, if you don't find an edge that has been kind of, or if you don't, like a lot of times, like if there's like a dormer or like something that juts out, generally those won't have like that same drip edge or attention paid to them. So things like that is where you can see the layers. And if there's multiple layers, then it's going to be a super expensive roofing job. And in addition, a lot of the like the older roofs, so like if there's just layer over layer over layer, then in the attic, if you walk up in there, then you're going to see like 2x4s with like spaces between them. Again, this is specific to the time that a lot of the Dayton homes were built. And shingles, like one row of shingles can't be applied there because the gap, the nails just don't go. So you're going to have to redeck that entire roof. So one of the surefire ways to figure out what kind of roof you're getting yourself into is to find your way into the attic and check between the trusses and whatnot and see what kind of material was used. Do you have to be a licensed agent to write up an offer? Any advantages of writing up your own offers? I think if your property's on the MLS and you want to write an offer on it, then yes, you have to be a licensed agent. A lot of times, one of the tricks of the trade that I was taught by several people that were nice enough to teach me these things is just reach out to the listing agent. And I mean, if you don't want to bring your own realtor to the table, if you're confident in your ability to not get taken advantage of, then reaching out to the listing agent and just having them act as a dual agent would probably be the easiest. And negotiating with the listing agent is probably going to be a little bit easier because they are familiar with their clients, like bottom dollar. And, if they are representing both sides, they're going to get like twice the commission. So instead of the 3%, they're going to get like 6 or maybe 5% commission. So that's cool. But yeah, man, when real estate is done right, there's more than enough money to go around for everybody. So as far as like getting licensed just to write up your own offers to save 3% on each transaction, I don't know. I know that people have done it, but I wouldn't do it. That's my thought on that. All right, 14 people on. We reached the bottom of the comment section, so go ahead and post your questions in the chat if you have any. Yeah. Should be pretty good. Should be pretty good. Let's see here. Oh, here we go. I haven't talked about this. Well, I haven't put this on the screen yet. Here is our Reddit. So if you want to continue the conversation all week, go ahead and join the Reddit. Let me see. There were 27 people at the start of this, and there are 27 people now. So nobody's joined, but that's okay. Good conversation. Yeah, I'm really excited. Let's see. You don't have one now, but what are some questions you would ask when pre-screening property managers? So the numbers are a lot higher in the area that you're in. So there's a lot more like cushion there, I guess. As far as like, here in this area, 8 to 10% that property managers charge, it's not really enough to make their business model go round. So they're kind of incentivized to some degree to charge for like service trips, charge for overages on the maintenance folks, and they're motivated to find different profit centers outside of just that like monthly percentage. And if you're not careful, if that monthly percentage is too low, then they really kind of eat into your profits by tacking on all these other charges. So I guess the two things that I would really be most interested in vetting a property manager is, what's their contract like? How easy is it to get out of their contract? I think I would not work with a property management company that charges any amount of money to break the contract. It should be month to month. And if either party wants to terminate management or that agreement, then they should have the ability to. Because what you don't want is to be stuck with a property manager that you strongly dislike. And I don't know if they are doing their job well, then it shouldn't matter if you want to leave them or not. So I don't think that you should like get strapped into a contract with like a penalty, like a financial penalty. And then also, I would say just understanding how they charge, like what all is included in that management fee, that flat percentage rate that you're paying them, and then what they charge extra for. That's what I would say. So those two things, I would just want those to be crystal clear. The first property management company that I had, I mean, they just nickel and dime me to death. $45 minimum service fee was applied. What felt like every single time either person called. It was a pretty big mess, in my opinion. Would you advise landlord to buy into home warranty for their properties? I actually was thinking about that yesterday because the realtor that I was with kept encouraging me, because he saw like both the properties that we looked at had a questionable AC unit and a questionable furnace. So he just recommended that he kept recommending that we just ask for a home warranty on the property and just wait for those things to fail. So I don't know. I think there's a strategy to it. I've never done it. The first property that I had, just because I was nervous, I bought a home warranty on it, but I never used it. And nothing ever really went wrong with the property. So I don't know. I've never really put any thought into it until yesterday, to use it as like a hedge against rusty mechanicals. But hey, it might have been a good idea. There are a few furnaces that we've had to immediately replace that I never really thought about putting a home warranty on, but that just feels a little greasy to buy a home warranty because of the condition of the HVAC or furnace. I don't know. It just kind of seems like a misuse of a home warranty. Are you invested in other states than the one state you live in? If not, why? The good deals haven't dried up yet. So the market that we're in is doing really well. There's still a lot of opportunity here. And I would say, above all else, it's because we're starting to experience some benefits of our scale. So we've got a good contractor team. We're building out the property management side, and we're able to, have somebody for everything. So I could not imagine. I think, I've talked about this previously early on. And I think 10 is like, once we got 10 properties, that's when we started noticing like a little bit of like preferential treatment from contractors. And they were just willing to kind of bump us up to the top of the schedule each time we needed something. So I would say, and also just like that's when the numbers started working really well. Like when we had less than 10 properties, we had like a meeting at the end of each month where it's just like, okay, how much money do we need to put in to keep this business alive for the next month? And then once we hit that like 10 mark, we realized, okay, we just didn't have to put money in. Like if one property had an issue, then the other 10 could handle it. So if we were to go into another market, we would start with a minimum of 10. So we would not enter a market without the ability to get to 10 within like a couple of months of each other. So there is that if we were to expand in that direction. We have hopes like way down the road of expanding into other markets, but for the time being, we are truly just really heavily focused on this area. Now, my brother lives in Jacksonville, Florida, so he invests in an area that he does not live in, but I do not. We're partners, by the way, if you didn't know that. I speak very highly of him very often. I think the world of him. And yeah, we're 50-50 on all the real estate stuff. All right, 16 people on, an hour and a half. I got to be honest, I'm losing some steam just mentally. So questions, if you guys got them, let's talk about them. Super pumped. Drink Red Bull. Man, no thanks. Nope. So will have me all jacked up. Got some water here, but it is empty at this point. Waiting on that ice to melt. Nope, not that either. Oh. All right. Well, in the meantime, let me go over here to the Reddit and see what else we could talk about. Let's see. Whew, legal structure, there's one post on here that is talking about an LLC within an LLC, and legal structure, fun fact, is my least favorite thing to talk about. And really, I tried to write a book on it at one point, and that's when it became one of my least favorite things to talk about, because you always hear so many things about legal structure, and this person does this and that person does that, and it's drastically different. And most, especially newer investors, they're just trying to navigate the water, are like, man, which one is the best? And unfortunately, the answer is extraordinarily inconclusive. It is truly up to personal preference, the amount of work that you're willing to put in, and the amount of money you're willing to pay to have like the protection. So truly, it comes down to whatever makes you sleep the best at night. But because it's such a common question, and because there's just so little out there, it likely would be very nice and worthwhile to, again, not an attorney or CPA, but just type out what I know on that. It'll be brutal, but it'll be fun. It's been a long road to get to this point. I had the jitters and queasy feeling, this being my first deal, but you answered all my questions. I'll pull the trigger tomorrow. Man, that is so exciting. It's a beautiful property too. I really like the blue. Let me see if I still have it up. Yeah, man. I don't think you can go wrong. And you've already experienced like the equity factor and like how powerful the equity is after a couple of years when you get a good deal, especially on like the VA loan. So just looking at this property, man, knowing where you're at and knowing like where you're at in life, your aspirations, I think given the market that you're in, given your circumstances, I think this is a bit of a home run deal, man. I would not have any apprehensions of doing it. In fact, I might even try to put together a plan to come visit it once you close on it. I'm looking at this picture, man. And then I looked at its proximity to the beach. Uh-oh, though. That says Invasion Beach, though. Maybe not. Maybe not. Just noticed you are live and trying to catch up on what was typed and where you are. Cool. What you're talking about, great answer on LLC, but that's what insurance is for. Earl Johnson, you are on top of things, man. Yep, that's what insurance is for. Yeah. And 3747, not only is he one of the most awesome people that I know, he probably single-handedly is all of this YouTube. There's one guy on here that comes on here often, Ash, and he always talks about like why my YouTube channel hasn't grown, and he's always disappointed in it, which appreciate the love. But man, all this whole YouTube journey thing has been worth it from like a handful of people that I've gotten to meet, and 7 is on that. Awesome dude and making real big moves. And he's also in the Seek Wisdom Mastermind group. So if you guys are interested at all, seek-wisdom.com/join. That's the link to it. And you can there's a video on the YouTube channel. If you just type in Seek Wisdom Mastermind, even on the general YouTube search bar, then this video will pop up. And it's a long video, but I wanted to be very clear on exactly what this mastermind is, what it's about, what the aspirations are, what the long-term vision of it is. And so you could just kind of figure out, is it a good fit for you or not? So yeah, I think it's really beneficial. And now I see a question. Also, be sure to join the Reddit because I've got high hopes and big wishes for that. Let me get this disclaimer back up and answer this awesome question that makes me angry each time I think about it. And that is, how do you manage landscaping on your properties? Weekly, bi-weekly, monthly? So that's a fantastic question. I think to be very dramatic about it, my least favorite part about investing in real estate in general are what I like to call foundation trees. I think what's that expression? They're like the bane of my existence, I would say. And, foundation trees, they come about because the resident doesn't do that great of a job trimming. So they cut the grass, but they don't trim close to the house. So then a couple of weeks later, after not trimming appropriately, you've got this tiny little tree forming. And then after not doing the trimming well, you can even cut the grass around that tree. A lot of the residents, sure, they'll cut the grass, but they don't have all the equipment appropriate to take down small trees. So these trees get bigger and bigger, flirting with the foundation of your house. And then this past week, I went into a house where actually the basement looked like a mini skateboard ramp because of all the roots from a really large tree. Just, I guess, hundreds of years of being a foundation tree. The roots grew into the basement, and on the floor it was all warped. And I had our project manager with us, and he said, hey, unfortunately, the only way to take care of this, like to do it the right way, would be jackhammering out all of this stuff and repouring it. And that's just, we were already like they were asking full retail for that duplex. So it was not worthwhile, but it just further amplified and validated my hatred of foundation trees. So we don't have a good way to get rid of those. The best we can, we get rid of all of those at turns. And that's the best thing that I can come up with, because in the single family space, as soon as you rent out a property, that yard maintenance becomes the resident's responsibility. Now, on our 4 units, on the duplexes that we have, the 3 unit, it's our responsibility to do the mowing, the snow removal, and just like the common area trash cleanup. So there's that. And on that, we do it on a bi-weekly as needed basis. So just like the general stuff that we're responsible for, our vacant properties plus our multifamilies, we do it on a bi-weekly as needed. So we have a really awesome guy that does all that stuff for us, and he is very honest. And if he, goes to one of these properties and realizes that it doesn't need it, he doesn't mow it. So there's the answer to that. But hey, thanks for getting my blood pressure up. It got me a little bit more alert and awake talking about foundation trees and my hatred for them. I'm a sponge for turnkey or any rental info. I study too much. Nah, you don't study too much, man. You probably don't study enough. You mentioned gutters and downspouts to redirect water away from the property. Have you installed French drains also to help with water retention? Water diversion. I don't want to retain any water. I want to spit it out far, far from my properties anytime ever. Yes. So the time that like French drains would be necessary, or the times that we've used them at least, is when the landscape around the house, the grade is negative or like slopes towards the foundation of the home. Even if it's very slight, you'll see like pooling of water right at any of the foundations. Anytime we see that, or since we are urban investors and some of these houses are built like right on top of each other, it's not uncommon to see like one house, 5 or 6 feet, and then another house, and in between both homes, there's like a sidewalk, and inevitably, like we've had one property where the next door neighbor did not have gutters on his house, and he was just an arm's length away from our house. So we got like 30% of all of the rain that hit his roof came right down to the base of our house. We even offered to put up gutters for him, and he just absolutely refused. So on that instance, we installed a French drain right where his gutters were hitting on our side of the property line. And just kicked it right out to the street. So that French drain in particular wasn't even attached to any of our like gutters or downspout systems. It was just a standalone French drain that went right out to the street. And then to finish up my original statement, whenever there's that negative grade, we will install a French drain right probably about 6 or 7 feet away from the house at that grade, just to catch all of the water that's rolling in and kick it out away from our house. Now, there are a few properties that we had where kicking it out to the street wasn't a possibility, or the water was just coming in such a strange spot. And in those cases, what we did is we routed all of those like downspout drains to one location, and we dug a massive hole and filled it with gravel. So rather than like pooling just like on the surface, causing all those mosquitoes and whatnot, it has to fill up like this 6 foot deep by 4 foot wide hole full of gravel and water, which can hold a surprising amount of rainwater, and then it'll just trickle out if it rains just really hard for a long time. But other than that, it'll just slowly leach out through the soil. Another fun topic, for whatever reason, I really love talking about water diversion. So I thought to myself, I actually told my sister-in-law, is that right? My brother's wife, just recently. We all went on like a family vacation, all our families together. It was tons of fun. But I told her, like, if somebody said, Ryan, you have to become a contractor right now, and like what I would do, I think I would try to be like a a water diversion specialist dig a bunch of trenches and lay a bunch of pipe. I didn't mean for that to come out like that. That's what I would do. I really think it's tons of fun to get groundwater away, because I've seen a lot of people in this area. They do like waterproofing of basements, but it's really expensive because they jackhammer out a perimeter inside the basement wall, and it's not really waterproofing. It's just allowing water to seep through your basement and then diverting it out of your basement once it breaches it. But like, if your basement is porous enough and if it takes on water, regardless of whether it's being deviated on the inside or not, it's still doing the damage to the basement walls upon entry. So you want to, keep your basement as dry as possible. And I mean, that's like $8,000 to $10,000 to do all that jackhammering and draining and sump pumping out to do the waterproofing on the inside of the basement. And I mean, our average job to put down, like dig the trench and lay down the drain pipe, is probably $1,200, $1,500. So, and it just solves a myriad of issues. And water is one of those things that, like the downspout could be just fine. Like, depending on, water could be pooling in one area, and the actual issue is like 20 feet away. It's just tons of fun to think about. A rental min amount of scrubs around the house. Same with buying. No trees. You are spot on. Staying away from foundation trees. Minimum amount of shrubs. Oh, shrubs around the house. Man, we just had one though. There was some there was shrubs and ground covering at the house. It looked really pretty. A sweet old lady did it, and I mean, she did it years ago. She had like the ground covering in the in like where flower beds and stuff would be. It looked great. It presented very well, but that ground covering had been there for so long that the ground covering roots like intertwined with the basement foundation walls. So it took us such a long time to figure out how water was getting into the basement, because we just did all those water deviation things that we talked about. And it wasn't until we started like digging along the wall that was getting in that we realized that the water was just following the ground cover roots, and we actually had to like hack it out of the basement walls. Mother Nature is strong, and with enough time and negligence, Mother Nature will reclaim anything she can. So, including your property. So I kind of feel like that's honestly all real estate is paying for the preservation of the home versus Mother Nature. Big thumbs up. As far as your acquisition platform is concerned, what PropStream lead type net the best results? Man, PropStream is so versatile. I mean, you could run any type of like filter or any sort of list that you want to work. You can do. I mean, I would say, quite honestly, the biggest net positive that PropStream has had for us is just the amount of time saving. I mean, I have saved so much time running comps, finding, like researching properties. It just allows me to make a decision probably about 10 to 15 times faster than I did previously before PropStream. As far as like leads go from PropStream, I mean, reaching out to the owners of properties that you are interested in, just doing like the drive-by, like when you're driving by properties and see something that you're interested in, PropStream gives you the ability just to type that in and immediately see any sort of liens. Is it in foreclosure? Who the owner is. On the app, you can do like a really quick skip trace. So, I mean, it's so versatile that it really comes, like, I don't think there's a best way to use it so much as there's, it just gives you all of the information to make really good decisions a lot faster than you otherwise would have. So it really comes down to like what type of deals you're using PropStream to find, really. Diversion. Great advice on drains. Great advice on everything so far. Thanks. I appreciate it. Tut. T-Town Supreme. Do you and your brother have a contract with each other? Yes. So all of our stuff is legally structured appropriately. We've got like an operating agreement that owns our LLC. Yeah, I mean we've done everything the right way, because once you start interacting with banks, they really like, even if it was just like even if it started as like a informal hey, let's do this together thing, then as soon as we approached any lender for a loan, they would ask for the operating agreement, and all the other things that LLCs are required to have. So yeah, but operating agreements aren't hard. An attorney generally puts them together for like $500. There are some that you can get on the internet that you can just sit down and do yourself for free. But I would recommend spending some money and getting it done right. But I know not all families the same. My brother and I are extraordinarily close. So the more people that we meet together in this business, I mean, we've had a lot of people that we're close with kind of pull us aside and say, hey, it's really cool that you guys have this relationship with each other, and I don't think you understand like how uncommon it is. So I mean, even before my brother and I decided to go into business together, I mean, we just naturally talked for an hour, 2 hours a day on the phone. So yeah, he was in the Navy, and I mean, obviously we grew up together. We weren't super close when we lived together, and then he went off to college, and then I enjoyed spending time with him a lot more when he came back home. And then he went through the Naval Academy. So then, like after his first deployment, when I went, several months without being able to talk to him, man, like from the day he got back from his first deployment, any day that he like wasn't deployed, we have talked probably multiple times to equal like an hour to 2 hours per day. So we're really close. And I guess I'm saying all that because the thoughts or like any sort of like remote levels of distrusts are like like super low, if not non-existent. So in our case, getting things in writing, it wasn't like a you better do this or else type thing. We did it because it's the respectful and courteous thing to do and a legal thing to do that banks are going to ask for. But as far as like figuring out, like, I would say just because of the comments about people not understanding like how uncommon it is, I really don't, because he's my only brother. But I would say if there is any uncertainty at all in who you're partnering with, the more clear that you can be in your legal paperwork, the better. So paying an attorney to get it done and going over everything and treating it like a worst case scenario, like forming a will, is probably the appropriate course of action. But good question, Angel. And hey, man, I thought you wanted to talk a couple weeks ago. I never saw an email from you. If you did send me an email, send me another one. I made a mistake a couple weeks ago where I accidentally marked all of my emails as read. Did not mean to do that. So there's my email address, ryan@seekwisdom.us. Shoot me an email and I'll do my best to respond. All right. Well, any questions, comments, concerns? Got 11 people on. We've been going for about 2 hours. So T-Town Supreme, Ryan. I really like this. This might be my one of my favorite comments that I've ever gotten on this live stream. I don't know what it means, but I like it a lot. So much so that I'm going to pin it. Oh. I like it a lot. Oops.
So,
I thought I muted it. Let's see here. Ryan, tut tut. Here we go. Let's pin this message. There we go. All right. Well, any other questions that you guys might have? If not, I'm gonna call it a day. I think I'm supposed to do something today at 11. Man, I love that comment. Tut tut. I don't know. I feel like you are somebody that I know, and this is an inside joke that I am forgetting. But it's resonated well. Yeah, man. Thanks for your time. I'm happy you're on here again. Also, Ed, hey man, that key machine, I purchased another one. It's been rolling. That one is still super dead. But one of the guys has an outlet in his truck bed. So we have gone around and we have made a lot of copies of keys with that key machine in his truck bed. And I think that's super cool. You know what? That might be another thing that I would do if I was forced to become like a contractor. Maybe I'd be like a lock specialist, a locksmith. That's what they're called. Have a mobile key making machine. That would be fun. Smart thing to do in case something happens to one, and then a new wife or girlfriend influence them to sue, etc. Lots of issues could arise. Again, you have a lot of good advice from you. Yeah, man, I would definitely say it's easier, but yeah, man, I appreciate it. Get it in writing for sure. I agree. Alrighty, well, man, Earl Johnson is going to. You're going to have a lot of comments once I end this live stream, I bet. Sometimes I feel bad. I'll come on later and see that there were a lot of comments that were left like right after I ended it because of the lag. But yeah, hey, next week, well, be sure to join the Reddit and let's get to talking. And then in the meantime, we can talk there. And if not, next Friday, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, I'll be right here. And with that, I will see you all next week.